Hey, I'm Becca with the Happy Ever Crafter, and today I'm going to show you two different techniques for using your Heidi Swapp Minc machine to apply different metallic foils to your work. Let's jump in. So first things first, let's talk about tools. For the first example, I'm going to be showing you using, of course, the Minc machine, but I'm also going to use gold Minc foil, which is just one of the options you can use for gold foil. There are some different brands, but I find that I get the best results with this one, and it is matching with my Minc machine, so that's always a plus. And then I have some Bristol paper. This is what I'm going to print my design on, and because this is 9 by 12, to put it in my printer, I need it to be 8.5 by 11, so I have a cutting tool here. And so for this first example, I'm also going to need a laser printer. It needs to be a laser printer and not an inkjet printer, because foil will only stick to toner, which is what comes out of a laser printer. So if you don't have a laser printer, you can go and get your design printed at like a Staples or Office Depot or whatever's near you. But laser printers are actually not that expensive. I think mine was about 50 bucks, and I'll link to it in the show notes, but it's definitely a good investment if you think you're going to be doing a lot of foiling. So I'm just going to go and hop in and get my design started, and then I'll show you how to foil it. So like I said, the first thing I need to do is actually cut my Bristol paper. So I'm going to do that first. So now I've got my paper cut to 8.5 by 11, which is the size that my printer takes. And the reason that I'm doing this as opposed to just using normal printer paper is that ink actually likes to stick better to smoother papers. So this is my Strathmore Bristol paper, and it's a lot smoother and thicker. It's like a cardstock than just a normal copy paper would be. So I'm going to put this in my printer, and I'm going to print off a design as an example. So now I've got my design printed off, and this is just a menu that I had created for somebody's bridal shower. And because it's printed on the 8.5 by 11 sheet, now I'm just going to cut it down to the actual size of the menu that I want. So now I've got my menu all set, and it's the size I want it. So I'll put that aside for a second, and now I'm going to turn on my Minc machine. So there's an on button on the back, and you just press the middle button. And usually when I'm doing a thick cardstock like this, I'll put it on either 4 or 5. So the higher the number, the hotter it gets, and you just let it warm up until that light turns green. And in the meantime, as that's warming up, I'm going to cut my foil to fit the size of this menu that I have. All right, so I've got my foil cut to the same size as the menu, a little bit bigger. And I'm actually also going to be using this laminating sheet. So this comes with the Minc machine when you buy it, or you can buy them separately. And so all you're going to do is put your design in there. I like to squish it right up against the side so it stays nice and flat. And your writing is going to be facing up. Don't forget that part, that's important. And then you're going to just kind of lay out the foil, squish it down nice and tight. You don't want bumps in there. And now that my Minc is warmed up, I'm actually just going to feed it into the front. Before you do that, you might want to make sure there's a switch on the back of these machines that has an R and an F. So one is front and one is rear. You want to be putting it in the front. So you're just going to lay it in, gold side up, and feed it through. So now as it starts to come out the back, just make sure you don't pull on it. You want to wait until it's fully done releasing. And when it's done, now for the moment of truth. So as I pull this away, sometimes the gold will stick to it. Just hold down the gold a little bit, and when you peel it off, you should get your gold foil. So one thing to note when you're doing it with this method, if you're using an at-home laser printer, sometimes you'll get little gaps in your letters just because the way the ink is printed is not always super great depending on what quality your printer is. Keep in mind that the higher quality your paper and the higher quality your printer with the ink is, the better your foil will turn out. So you need to remember that sometimes if you're doing this kind of thing, it will still end up looking homemade. Like this doesn't look super professional if there's little gaps in some of the areas of my writing. But if you're gonna do a more professional piece, you can just bring it to a professional printer and have them do the toner part. But other than that, that's really the explanation for method number 1. So for the second technique, this process is very, very similar, except I'm going to use different tools. So this is silver foil, and I'm using a pre-made card. This is just like a pretty smooth pre-made card that I bought. And I'm also going to be using this Mink Toner Pen. So this is also Heidi Swapp brand, and it's just a pen that has the toner ink if you don't have a toner pen, or toner printer, sorry. So you'd be using this as opposed to printing something out. So this allows you to actually draw whatever you want to draw. So I'm just going to go ahead and write my word. And I'm going to actually write the name Sarah because I'm making a card for somebody, so it's perfect timing. And so for this, I'm going to actually be doing faux calligraphy. So if you don't know what faux calligraphy is, you can go back to some of my previous tutorials where I talk about that. But I'm just going to write the word and try and get as much coverage with the ink as possible. So you don't want any streaky spots or any spots that you can't see the ink, or else the foil won't stick to it. So now I'm going to cut some of this silver foil to fit the size of the card that I'm doing. And you actually only need a piece of foil that's the size of the letters. You don't need it to cover the entire card. So you'll notice that my piece is slightly smaller than the front of my card. There's no sense in wasting your foil. So just flatten it down and then grab your transfer folder. And same thing as example number 1, you're just going to put your card and the foil right into the corner of your transfer folder and smooth it down. But you'll notice that on my transfer folder, because it's old, it kind of has all this like nasty crap all over it. So I tend to try and avoid that because sometimes it'll actually stick, like the foil will stick to it. So I'm just going to move my card down and get it away from that stuff. And then I'm just going to feed it into the machine like we did in the previous example. And so just like in the last example, I'm just going to open this up. And as I start to peel off the silver, it should be sticking to where I had drawn the name Sarah. Pretty and silver. So what you might notice with using these ones is that there are slight imperfections in it. So it's just a matter of how much ink you're putting down on the page, but you'll see like in the different letters here, so in the R and the H, you'll notice that there are little spots that aren't perfectly covered. And that's just kind of the nature of a handmade product and using this Minc pen. So it kind of gives it character sometimes, and it looks even cooler if you're doing it on black paper and stuff. But it's just something that you have to kind of learn to expect with these tools. So that's example number 2 with the Minc pen. The last thing I want to talk to you about is these pre-made foiling sheets by Heidi Swapp. So these are the same brand as the Minc machine, but it's just a packet of pre-made designs that are high quality laser ink, and they're all pre-printed, so you can foil them yourself and use them for different things. So I have this package and I already have a couple cut up, so I'm gonna just go ahead and grab one of these. I'm going to show you how to use this polka dot pattern. So I have a piece of foil cut already that's about this size, so I'm just going to put this here, and then I'll grab my laminating folder and I'm just going to put it inside. So as always, same thing, the design inside should be facing up and the foil on top, and then you want to just get it in nice and snug against the corner of your laminating folder. And then once again, you're just going to feed it into the machine and let it go through. And then once again, as I grab this and take it out, you'll really see the difference in how the gold foil sticks with this pattern, with the high quality paper and the Heidi Swapp brand stuff. So you'll see that the dots are perfectly covered and there's really no black ink showing through. So because this paper is like really nice and smooth, and it's actually a coated paper, so it's quite soft on the touch, the ink or the foil sticks really nicely to the ink. So these are great for just buying and using to decorate stuff. And if you want to get this kind of quality, then you're going to have to use like a pretty expensive toner printer or have it done professionally. When you're finished with the Minc machine and it's still heated up at the level 4, you need to use this middle button and keep pressing it until it goes back to the 0, and that red light will start flashing on the 0. It's important that you do this so that the machine has time to cool down before you actually just hit the off button or unplug it, because that could damage the machine. So just leave it on the 0 setting and it'll take a while to cool down, but once it does, then you can unplug and turn it off. So that's it for today's foiling tutorial. I hope that was helpful, and I will leave all of the materials and everything that I've used in the notes below. And I will see you in the next tutorial.